everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the books that I read in February. And I'm going to start this off by saying I think I read too many books. I legitimately think I read too many books because like when I look at this pile, I just kind of feel whatever about it. Like I feel like I legitimately am reading too much, that these books don't like, I don't know what it is. So I feel like I read too much. Like I feel like I need to tone it back next month. Like I feel like I want to read under 10 books next month, because this month I read 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17. I read 17 books this month, and I think that's too many for me. I legitimately want to de-influence you guys from reading this many books. I feel like it's become a little bit of a discourse lately, especially there's some drama on TikTok about this, where people are judging other people for how much they're reading. And I think how much you read just depends on you. Like I feel like read what you feel like is appropriate for your reading. And I'm gonna tell you right now, 17 books is too many for me. 17 books is too many. I didn't have time to properly sit with any of these books, and I feel like I need more time to read them and not rush myself to read these books. Although the one that sticks out to me the most is the one that I read in 24 hours. Like, I don't know. And that makes me question things. So I don't know if it's the books or it's me reading too much, not sitting with the books like long enough. Like I feel like I should be taking more time reading these books. I think that's what I'm gonna do in March though. I think March I am going to basically limit my reading and only read so much a day, and like prioritize some other things, where when I finally decide to read, it's like, oh, I'm really excited to pick up this book, instead of constantly reading. Because that's what I'm doing. Like throughout the day, I'll just be sitting and watching TV, and I'll pick up a book for like 10 minutes and then I'll put it back down and watch TV. I feel like what I need to do through March is like not do that. I feel like I need to just like read for like an hour and then sit everything away from me and go do other things for like a couple hours, and then be like, okay, I kind of want to read for another half an hour or something. Just limit my exposure to books in March and see if that kind of makes me just a little more excited. I feel like I've taken some of the fun out of reading myself, like just because I'm like consuming so many books. I feel like I shouldn't. So personally for me, I think I'm gonna like just chill out a little bit in March. I'm gonna relax a little bit in March. So hopefully I will have under 10 books in my March wrap up, which feels bad because I already have one book, because I read Phantasma over the last like 4 days. And of course I finished it today, which is March 1st. So it counts towards March's books. I'm not counting it. I'm not counting it as one of the 10. So if I read 11 books, yeah. So anyway, let's get into this, because there are quite a few I'm very excited about. I need a second to like remember what I've read. I feel like February lasted forever. Like I'm looking at some of the books I read earlier this month and I was like, wow, like this was in February. So anyway, let's start with what we've DNF'd. We actually don't have like that many to talk about. First, let's talk about the ones that I don't physically have. I think it's just one. Yeah, and that is Masquerade of the Heart. This is the follow-up to Curse, which is it? Garden of the Curse. This is the follow-up. This is the second book in the duology of Garden of the Curse. I just don't really understand what the author was thinking when they wrote this book, because it feels like a totally different author took over the duology and decided to like throw out all of the amazing concepts from the first book and just wrote whatever they wanted in the second book. It was very strange. I really can't talk about it other than that, but I did DNF it. If I'd finished it, it probably would have been a 1 or a 2 star. And moving on to the books that I physically have that I DNF'd. First up, I'm really sad about this one. I should have actually given this to my mom. My mom is visiting. They literally just left. I should have given this to her because she likes these books, but I DNF'd The Muse. This was actually one of my 25 of 2025, which is really sad. This is basically telling the story of the muses and their like childhood and how they kind of became the muses. So it's like before Hercules, but still supposed to have like some Hercules vibes. This is supposed to be young adult, and it's written very middle grade. Like it's written very, very young. So I don't know if the Disney books are necessarily for me. Like I want to like them because they have such interesting ideas, and I definitely was a Disney kid. So the idea of reading these like alternate Disney stories is always so enticing. Like I really wanted to read this and like this. There's also like 1,000 perspectives in this book, and you guys know I do not like more than 2 perspectives. It takes a lot for me to like more than 2 perspectives. So this one just unfortunately did not work. So I did end up DNFing this at like 55 pages for writing style, how young it is, and just too many perspectives for me to really care about the book. The rest, oh no, never mind. The rest are for videos. So you have seen this if you've watched all my vlogs, but for the Purge romance vlog, I did attempt to read The Wedding Dashers. I did not like this whatsoever. I got pretty far into this one too. I think I got like over 100 pages into this one, and it was just goofy, and I hated the characters. These characters are actually legitimately obnoxious and kind of bad people. Like, oh my gosh, the sister. Everyone's a bad person in this book. It was not fun to read about just legitimately bad people because you're supposed to be rooting for them. And I was like, I hate all of you. I actually hate all of you. But yeah, it's supposed to be about these two characters. They're trying to go to the same wedding and they get stuck having, what is it? I'm getting this one confused with another book because two books that I read were very, very similar. This one is very similar to, oh no, what is it called? I read it last month. Holiday Romance. This one and Holiday Romance have a very similar premise, but Holiday Romance was done so much better. Like, that was an amazing book. This one, not so much. But yeah, she is, oh yeah, they're trying to go to the same wedding and they end up deciding to travel together, and it's just, it's not fun. It's not a fun book like Holiday. Oh, read Holiday Romance. Don't read this one, read Holiday Romance. And then the next three, we really don't need to talk about too much. If you want to know more about them, these were in my reading all of my book box books. These are all of the January books that I attempted to read, and it was a disaster of a video. It was absolutely a disaster. First one up is Watermoon. I just didn't like anything about this. I didn't like the story, didn't like the writing. I didn't like it jumping around constantly in the timeline. I hated that. I hate non-linear timelines. But yeah, this one is just supposed to be like, I don't even know if I could tell you what this is about, but it's about like this magical pawn shop and someone goes missing and they're trying to find this missing person and kind of the point of life. I don't know. I didn't like this. I can see why other people like this. It's going to be for a very specific set of people, but I actually kind of despise this book. Next one I DNF'd, which is really sad, is Cruel's the Light. Again, this one had a great idea. I will say that. This one was a great idea, but executed poorly because it was just, again, it was jumping around so much and I didn't feel any chemistry with the characters. I think I got 150 pages into this one, but the idea behind this one is it's in a world that is overrun by like super powerful vampires, but it's specifically taking place in like this alternate Vatican City situation. It really didn't explain the world well, and for me with this type of book that like seems like it should have a lot of world building, it didn't have like any world building. I was very lost about what exactly our characters were fighting for, like what the point of the book was, other than there was like an entity of evil, but I didn't really understand why they were evil or what their purpose was. So I quickly lost interest because I did not feel or understand the motivation of anything that was going on. So DNF. And then the last one, sadly, I DNF'd The Scorpion Queen. And I talked about this one a lot in that video because this is, to me, an example of a book that should not have been published, which to me, neither of those should have been either. But this lacked any editing. Like it was so like, yeah, there's no spelling errors. Great job for that. But it was such a generic story that didn't really do anything. The writing was incredibly poor. Like the style, it was so choppy. It felt like I was reading a draft of what could have been a really, really good book. And it's just like no one gave it the love and attention that it should have had to become that great story. So out of all the books, this one makes me the angriest, not even at the author, just at like the publishing. Like, why did you publish this way earlier than it should have been published? I don't get it. Give this book more attention. I feel bad. I feel like this book should be given another chance with a different publisher and editor. Like, that's how I feel about this one. So this was a DNF. I got halfway through this one. I tried to push through this one because, again, I thought the idea was pretty good, but it was really bad. So I did DNF it. And those are all the DNFs. I feel like that's pretty good. I feel like that's pretty good. I'm hoping for 0 DNFs in March. That's my goal. 0 DNFs in March. We are reading less books. Okay, I can't say 0 DNFs because we are doing Purge videos. So no DNFs outside of the Purge videos. So outside of the Purge videos, we only had Bemused, actually. No, and Masquerade. Well, Masquerade of the Heart kind of counted because it was part of that. So I would say only Bemused was the only DNF they had outside of one of the Purge videos because the romance video was a Purge video. Anyway, moving on to the books that we've read this month. We're gonna go back to going in order of least favorite to favorite. That's just kind of how I like doing it. It organizes it in my brain so I don't miss anything. But the worst book that I read this month and will be going on my worst books of the year is The Crash by Frida McFadden. Oh my gosh, I hated this book. This was miserable to read. I only finished this book because I was buddy reading it with my mom, who did enjoy it. Great for her. She had a good time. I'm so happy she did because I was living in hell reading this book. And I can't believe it because I read The Boyfriend last month, which was one of my favorite Frida McFaddens. I gave it like a 4.5. And then I read The Crash this month, which is a 1 star. I would give it 0 stars if I was able to. 1 star. I want to give it negative. That's how much I hate this book. I hated the characters. I hated the premise. It was literally just a really shitty misery ripoff. Which I find really funny because my friend, I told her I was reading The Crash by Frida McFadden, and she was like, oh, I just saw Stephen King post reading it. And I was like, that's weird. And then I started reading it and I was like, oh, makes sense because she blatantly ripped off his book Misery. That's all it is. That's really it. And like normally Frida McFadden has some sort of crazy twist in the books. There was 0 twist in this book that you could not see coming. Like everything was so blatantly obvious. I hated this book. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it so much. It was not it. It was not it. I would not recommend this one unless you want to like absolutely hate your life for a little while. Don't read this one. Next up, a book that will probably be on my worst books and my most disappointed, we have Immortal. I really don't want to talk about this one that much because it's so bad. It's so bad. I don't understand because Daughter of the Moon Goddess and Heart of a Sun Warrior were two of my, like, it's one of my favorite duologies, and then Tales of Celestial Kingdom was amazing. I don't know where the writing went. I don't, like, this is written so poorly. The plot is done so badly. The romance is atrocious, and one of the best things in Daughter of the Moon Goddess was the romance. I don't understand. It's like they slapped the tag romantasy on this book, and Su Tan forgot how to write a good story, and that is so mean to say, but it is so true. I don't understand what happened because it is garbage. It is garbage, and the more I sit with it, the more I hate it so much. It was just done so badly, and I knew what it was doing too. I knew what it was doing, and it still didn't help. Like, you got to the end and it revealed the thing, and it's supposed to be like, oh, it makes sense why it was like this the whole time, and it's like, yeah, but it still sucked. Like, that's the problem. It's really hard to execute what she wanted to do. That's what it really comes down to, is she had a good idea, but there's a reason why people don't do it very often, because it was not executed it's like almost impossible to execute this well. And she did it phenomenally badly. So unfortunately, I wanted to DNF this one, but I refused, but it is getting a 1 star. Next up, we have a 1.5. The fact that this beat Immortal makes me want to scream into the void, but we have Icebreaker. This isn't good. This isn't good. I did read it, but it was painful. It was painful to get through. This is in my romance purge if you want to see more about this one, but it was kind of what I expected it to be. Unfortunately, this is not my style of romance whatsoever. No. No, I can kind of see why people like this one, but I also thought it was boring on top of just being a lot. Like, it was a lot, and I don't really think these characters actually like each other. They would never work in real life. They just would not work in real life. So yeah. Couldn't enjoy it, but it's basically just a hockey figure skating romance that takes place in college. Next up, we have another huge surprise, but I am glad to see in the comments. So you guys like really showed up for me in the comments of that video. I gave Book Lovers a 2.5. I really did not enjoy this book. It's probably closer to a 2, but I liked the plot of this one, and I liked what it could have been. I just don't think this was executed well. Again, I would go check out that romance vlog because I do talk about this one extensively and what I would change. I think there might be a little spoiler section in that one because of that. I kind of talk about how I would like rewrite the book. Obviously, I'm not Emily Henry. She is a prolific writer. But for me, this one was not it. But yeah, it's following an editor and an agent. That's what it is. And they go to this small town, and it's just supposed to be this like cute rom-com, and It was fine. It was fine. I just really didn't like it. I didn't like it. I feel like it could have gone in a totally different direction and would have been a 5-star, and it did not. It did not. So if you want full thoughts, go to that vlog. Next up, I read A Touch of Ruin, which is the second book in the Persephone Hades story. And yes, I am not reading the Hades stories. I'm probably done with the series, actually. So I ended up giving A Touch of Ruin 3 stars. It is a soft 3-star because I didn't necessarily love the change in the characters. Like, the characters became totally different people from the first book, and I don't really want to read any more about them because I just don't like them as characters. I also have not sobbed that hard during a book. Like, I was sobbing during this book. This actually had a really, really sad storyline, but generally it was mostly Persephone and Hades being totally different people than they were in the first book, and that's kind of pretty much all I can say about it. But it is the second book after A Touch of Darkness. So yeah, it just existed. Next up, we have A Serpent in the Wings of Night. Apparently this month was Romantasy month. I did give this a 3-star, another very, very soft 3-star, and it's pretty much on par with A Touch of Ruin. I just was really bored while reading this. I didn't find this compelling. I didn't like the romance, really. I didn't feel the romance. I didn't buy it. I didn't understand the world. That was my biggest problem, is I need a lot of really good world building in a fantasy book, and nothing. I really didn't get anything in this. I still don't exactly know what's going on between like the 2, 3, 5 different factions of people, and there's like factions within the factions. So yeah, don't really know what's going on in this still, and I didn't love the trials. I thought they were kind of lame. And like I said, didn't really love the characters either. So this was a big miss for me. I am gonna still try the second one though. Then I read, what was it called? 6 Scorched Roses. So I had to clean all day yesterday, so I just popped that audiobook in because I do love the audiobook narrator, I will say, for this series. I actually enjoyed it better. I gave it a 3.5. I actually kind of had a really good time with the short story, the novella. I thought it was a lot better actually than Serpent in the Wings of Night. I love the cute little story. I would have preferred that to be a whole story. I was so interested in the medical aspects of that. I love how I didn't tell you what A Serpent in the Wings of Night is about because I really couldn't tell you, but it has vampires in it. But this is taking place in the same world, and it's following our main character, Lilith, who is like a scientist, and she's trying to cure her village of this deadly disease, and she has to ask this vampire for help. And it's such a good story. I'm so sad that that wasn't the full-length story because it was so much better. And because it was so short, I didn't get there with the romantic connection, but I felt it more than I did in The Serpent in the Wings of Night. So it gets a 3.5. It could have been a 4 if it was a full-length book, or a 5. Next up, I Did Something Bad, which is actually, it was really fun. This is a really, really fun book. This is my Illumicrate copy, and this is just a really cute rom-com that is following our main characters, one who is an actor, which is like one of my favorite things, and one who is a journalist, and she is following him around for this like exclusive thing, and then someone shows up murdered and they go from there. My biggest problem with this book is actually the ending of it. Otherwise it would have been like closer to a 4, but I just felt like one of our characters was treated kind of unfairly by the other one. Like, I feel like one of our characters had to give up everything about themselves and apologize for all this stuff that I feel like they didn't need to apologize for, and it kind of felt like she got steamrolled at the end by everybody else. So I didn't love the ending, but I loved everything else about this book. I thought it was really, really fun, and it was just kind of like a really fun murder mystery story that it reminded me a little bit of the first Dal A for Auntie's book, is how this kind of felt. So I did very much enjoy this. Next up, we have The Underwood Tapes. This was definitely a cover buy. I love the cover of this. This was so good. This is also a 3.75, bordering a 4-star. I just feel like this is one that could have done well with more exploration of the characters. I feel like it just kind of left a little bit to be desired from the mystery, but man, this one also made me sob. If you want a just like sad but story where you kind of learn about these characters, it's definitely a character study. It's like a murder mystery character study kind of thing. That's very sad. I would recommend this one, but man, this one was a surprise. I will say this was a surprise, and I did really like the audiobook. But it's following our main character whose mom just died, and she ends up going to this place basically where her mom is from, and she ends up taking a job at like the historical society, and her job is to transcribe these audio tapes before they kind of get destroyed. So she's trying to just transcribe them onto like CDs or something where they're not going to get destroyed because the audio tapes are basically becoming obsolete. And so she's listening to them, and she hears this voice, and she decides to record herself on one of the tapes, and then she gets an answer back from the boy who is doing the tapes back in like the 80s, and it's like So you're kind of learning about this story, and there's a whole big mystery that's happened in this town. I do think the ending was a bit anticlimactic, which also is why it doesn't get a higher rating. But generally, this was a big surprise, and I would recommend this one for fans of more emotional mysteries. And our last 3.75, we have Garden of the Cursed. This one only, this was a 4-star, but it has lowered down to a 3.75 because I did not like the second book. And also, this is just one that's not going to stick in my head like super well. Like, I'm already starting to forget what's going on. But it's following our main character who was a part of like this high class group of people, and then her mom went missing and a bunch of drama happened with that, and she ends up living in the kind of like the slums, I guess they would call it, and she works as a curse breaker, and then she ends up having to work with one of her old friends to break his curse, and there was like a romantic entanglement, and it's just a lot of fun. So she's working on her mom's mystery, working on the mystery of the curse on her old friend, and dealing with the things in her past that she's kind of let fester in her life. So love this book. This is actually a really, really good book. It just was really let down by the second one. Next up, we have a reread. I'm not gonna really talk about it that much since it is a reread, but I reread A Touch of Darkness, and I'm really glad I did because I really enjoyed this book. This book is so good. I do think the rest of the series, at least A Touch of Ruin, is not very good, so I think I am going to stop at A Touch of Ruin. I really don't want to ruin the feeling of this book with the rest of the series because this is a 4-star book for me, and I so love the characters in this book. Persephone and Hades in this are so good, and I love how the world is constructed in here, having New Athens and stuff. It's very much like an adult version of Lore Olympus. I don't know which one came out first, but they feel very similar. So if you like this, you probably will like Lore Olympus. If you like Lore Olympus, you'll probably at least like this first book. So it's just a good time. I'm complicated with this one. I put this in the wrong space. This actually should be, I don't know. This is why the ratings are so hard. I rate Romantasy a little bit easier than I rate other things. And this is one of those situations where I enjoy this book more than the two that I just talked about, but it is rated lower, because my expectations for Ali Hazelwood are higher than they are for the books that I've been talking about. So this is technically a 3.75, but I enjoyed it as much as the 4 stars under it. I know it's really, really weird, but this is my ranking Ali Hazelwood system. So anyway, this is Deep End. I did read this basically the day it came out, and this is not as scandalous as people are talking about. It's not. Like, there is a BDSM storyline in this, which I do wish it had explicitly stated. Like, this has become the drama on TikTok, and I think there's no correct side. I think people are being way too nasty to each other over this book because it does not say anywhere that this is BDSM, and people are like, just read the warning. We're gonna talk about that very, very quickly because I don't want to make a whole video about this. Deep End has a BDSM storyline, and a lot of people were very, very upset about it because they did not know. If you just read the back, it doesn't say anything about that, and people were very upset about it. And so some people were like, well, why didn't you read the trigger warning page? And it's like, okay, that is a valid thing. And people are saying, oh, it's no kidding, people didn't like this book because they can't actually read since they didn't read the trigger warning stuff. And it's like, that's so nasty. That's too far. But then the people who are mad about this book are like yelling at the author, and like, why didn't you warn us about this? Why didn't you? And it's just like, oh, you're taking it too far. You are taking it too far. Every single person on both sides of this are taking it too far. So very quickly, number one, I read Ali Hazelwood books. I don't read pretty much any books that I read, like now what I'm getting into now has a trigger warning page, but 95% of the books that I read don't have trigger warning pages. And that was not a thing like 1 to 2 years ago. Trigger warning pages are still incredibly new, especially in just general publishing. I do think like Kindle Unlimited and self-publishing was much more on the forefront of that. So if you've been reading those for a long time, you're probably more used to trigger warning pages. I still forget they're a thing. So that doesn't mean I can't read. I just don't remember that they're legitimately a thing. So it's literally, if you open this book up, you have this page, and Praise for Ali Hazelwood, you skip it. Also by Ali Hazelwood, you skip that. Then there's the title page. And then you have the dedication. And if you just skip it, you'll miss it. Like, do you see? Like it's so easy to miss this little trigger warning page, and then you're in the book. So you don't need to be mean to people about them missing the trigger warning page. And also, let me read you the trigger warning page because people are like, read the trigger warning page. It tells you everything that you need to know about this book. it doesn't. Dear reader, once again, thank you so much for choosing one of my books. This one might be my favorite I've ever written, and I'm so happy it's out in the world. Before you dive in, I want you to know that this work contains consensual and negotiated explorations of kink, in particular of power exchange. If you choose to read it, I hope you enjoy the experience. I am not well versed in kink or whatever power exchange. I did not read that as BDSM. So I understand why people are confused. Like, you read that and it's not explicit what is in this book. So I think everybody just needs to take a little bit of a chill pill. I do think though, if you are looking at art like this, you probably need to look up trigger warnings if you have them. Like, that's the thing. If you're reading a romance book, you probably do need to look it up if you have issues. But this is probably not enough. You need to explicitly say there will be talk of BDSM, etc. in this book. So again, like I said, I think both sides have completely accurate concerns. I just think both sides are being jerks about it. They are. Like, everyone's just kind of being a jerk about it. So I gave this a 3.75. My rating does keep changing with this. I think it's been a 4, it's been a 3.5, and now it's a 3.75. It's fluid. This book is fluid, just like the water in it. So it's a fun book. It is not as dirty as people were saying it is. It's barely about BDSM. The most BDSM stuff is literally at the beginning when they're just talking about it. Really, during the actual sex scenes, I would say it's pretty vanilla, especially compared, like, I feel like Not in Love was worse when I read in that, because I quit that one. So I do think there's just a lot of discourse that it's just messy. This book is messy. Actually, the book's not messy. It's the people reading this book are messy. This book is fine. It's a good Allie Hazelwood book. Yet again, she writes characters really fun. This is taking place in college in Stanford. It is about swim teams. Our main character is an Olympic swimmer. Our main female character is a diver who has hopes to go into the Olympics. And it was just really, really good. I enjoyed this book. I don't think it was her best, because I didn't fully feel the romance between the two main characters. They're not my favorite main characters, but I really liked the plot in this one. I thought she did a really, really good job of the plot. So anyway, I feel exhausted talking about this book, and I still have so many more to talk about. Next up, we have Silver on the Bone. This ended up being a really, really good book. I almost DNF'd this a couple of times because it's so slow, but the payoff for this one is so good. Basically, the first 150 pages, not that great. The rest of the book, phenomenal. So this is kind of like a take on King Arthur. It's not really a retelling because we don't go back really through King Arthur's story, but it's following our main character who is she is a hollower. I'm glad I remembered that. And she hunts for artifacts, and she kind of gets herself and her brother into some issues. They get into some situations, and I don't want to say anything else because I feel like this takes a really interesting turn, and I kind of love it for that. So artifact seeking, trying to save people in worlds, and it's very fun. It is very, very fun. Next up, we have yours truly. This is a 4-star. This should have been a 5, but this did a thing. The end of this book did a thing. But it's following our two main characters who are both doctors, and they come to this fake dating agreement, which is always fun. And yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's just fake dating for reasons. That's it. But the ending frustrated me. This had a chance to end. There's a moment that should have ended, and then it didn't, and the rest of the book was bad. The last 50 pages were terrible, but I loved the rest of the book. Again, another one I read for my romance purge. Next up, we have this book is going to stick with me. This is a Taylor Jenkins Reid ripoff. If you haven't read it yet, I'm surprised. You've probably all heard of it, but it is The Favorites. This is such a good book. I read this in 24 hours. The only reason this is not a 5-star book is because of the stupid storyline between two of the characters. Oh man, I hated it. I hated the storyline between two of the characters. It ruined the whole book. It almost made me want to quit the book. I hated it that much. And I feel like it didn't leave a lot of space at the end of the book to actually do some interesting things. So this is following two figure skaters, and it follows them from when they're 16 to when they're like in their 30s. And it's their whole story, and it's told through interviews and also our main character's Katerina, her point of view of everything happening. And it's so good. It's very much told more like Daisy Jones and the Six. I felt very much Daisy Jones and the Six vibes from this one, but you could slap Taylor Jenkins Reid name on this, and I'd buy that it was written by her. Like, it is so very much similar to what she would write. I don't think she would write the Beth storyline, though. She would not do that to me. She would not write that Beth storyline. So anyway, there's a storyline with one of the characters, Beth, that happens later in the book. Despise it. Is her name Beth? Now I'm like thinking that her name is not Beth. Bella. It's Bella. Bella. I'm so bad with names. The Bella storyline I hated. Everything else was amazing. The problem is the Bella storyline took up so much time, and so at the very end, basically they go to the Olympics. There's an Olympic storyline at the very end of this. It's not a spoilers or anything. And everything that happened at the Olympic storyline happens in like 30 pages when it really needed like its own 100 pages. So if you just cut the little Bella storyline out of there and elongate that scene, much better. Much better, would have been a 5-star. But yeah, this gets 4.25. 4.25, yes. 4.25. Loved everything else about it. And then we are on to my 2 5-stars. But it's funny because I had more enjoyment reading the favorites, and it was not a 5-star, than my 2 5-stars. Because again, it's just one of those weird situations. And you'll know what I mean, because one of them is Morningstar. I don't know what it is about this series that it's like, I love it when I read them, and then I'm like, why is this a 5-star? And my brain's like, I don't know, but it is. That's it. This is the 3rd book in the Red Rising series. Yeah, I do think this is the best one. I really enjoyed it. Could I tell you that much that happened in it? No. I will, though, the second I start Iron Gold, which is something I'm going to start in April, I'll remember everything that happened in the series, but just because it like comes back to you in like this moment, you're like, oh my gosh. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about the series. I feel like I shouldn't like them, and I'm obsessed with them. I don't know. Can't tell you. Can't tell you the reason. And then the very last book, again, I didn't necessarily enjoy this book. I didn't enjoy reading it, but wow, this is a good book. Like, I don't think you can rate this anything other than 5-star for what this is, and the writing and the storytelling. For how long this is and what the topic is, I can't believe I read it so quickly. And like, my brain could not stop thinking about this book. And it is The Reformatory. This is a masterpiece. Like, it's a masterpiece. I'm pretty sure I read Icebreaker around the same time I read this, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what is actually happening right now? This is horror. Like, this is horror. This is gothic, historical horror. And I feel like a lot of people are this is gonna be a lot of disagreeing if this is horror or not, because a lot of people don't take into consideration like real horror, like real people horror is still horror. Just because it doesn't necessarily scare you doesn't mean it's not terrifying to other people. So I saw that a lot. I saw people talking about this book and it's like, I don't get why this is horror. And it's like, this is horror. This is straight up horror. This is taking place in what time period? It is 1950, and there's still segregation, and there's lynchings, and the entire Black population is terrified in this, I think it's is it Savannah? No, it's Gracetown, Florida. And so we are following couple of different characters. It has a lot of different characters that we're following, but it works. This is one of those stories that does it so well, you don't even notice that there's that many people that you're from the perspective of. So you have everybody in this story. You have a young Black girl who is trying to protect her young brother, and her young brother is going to this reformatory, and that's tough. And then you have the white people, like every degree of white person who is sympathetic but won't help them. Then there's the people who will help them, but they're like also looking out for themselves at the same time. And then you have just the blatantly super crazy racist white people in this. And then you have the Black people who also want to help but can't because they've kind of wrapped themselves up in some other stuff that they're dealing with. So it just goes into all of the insane intricacies that were happening in this time period and the motivations of every single person in here. And it is the most intense book I think I've ever read. Like, this is insanely well written and so intense. And I don't feel like I can talk about this. Like, I can't give this book justice just talking about it. Like, if you have any inkling of reading this, you should read it. It's amazing. It is so good. I feel like I learned a lot from this book, and it kept me so enthralled with what was going on, and like, you want to look away. You want to look away and you can't. And yeah. I don't know how else to talk about this book. This is also the special edition from Aardvark that has the signed page. and the Pretty Edition. I'm so glad I ended up getting this. I was nervous to read this because I'm not a historical fiction fan, no matter what it is. So I am glad that I went out of my comfort zone and ended up reading this, because this is easily the best book that I read probably this month and last month. So I loved this. You should read it, but definitely check out trigger warnings. This is, I mean, this whole book is a giant trigger warning. That's the point of this book, is to make you uncomfortable. And it very much succeeded in doing that. So this is phenomenal. Best book of the month. So anyway, I feel like this reading month actually did go really, really well. We had some 5 stars, some 1 stars, a lot of 4 stars, a lot of like middle of the road books. I'm hoping to get a really, really like, oh my gosh, this is 1000% a favorite book ever. Like I really want that feeling, and I haven't gotten that yet. The Reformatory is probably the closest, but I wouldn't say it's like enjoyable to read. So it's one of those weird ones where it's like, you can tell this is an amazing book, but I didn't enjoy the experience reading it, because you're not really supposed to. So anyway, that was my wrap up. Definitely let me know what you guys read in February, what you liked, what you didn't like, your ratings for things. If you've read any of these, if you think I would enjoy anything based on I read in this video, definitely like the video if you enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe so you miss any future content. We've got a lot of stuff for March. Yeah, I feel like I had a good reading month. I feel like I had a fun time. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.